So I'm 28 now, but let me take you back to when I was growing up with my twin brother. It was like we were living in two totally different worlds under the same roof. For some reason, my parents were super convinced that my brother was going to do something amazing with his life, like he was some kind of golden child. And then there was me, who they saw as the black sheep of the family. Why? Just because I wasn't all that into studying. I was more about having fun, playing sports, and hanging out with friends. This whole situation was super tough on me. Imagine constantly being compared to your twin and always feeling like you're not measuring up. It really did a number on how I saw myself. Birthdays were the worst. We shared the same birthday, but it felt like it was all about him. He'd have these big fun parties with all his friends and I was pretty much just there. He even got to have sleepovers, but me, I wasn't even allowed to invite friends over to our place. It was like I was invisible, but it wasn't all bad. I actually loved a lot of things about being a kid. And there was one person who always made me feel special, my grandma. She was awesome. Every time she came over, she'd bring me my favorite chocolates and sometimes even gave me a little money so I could buy myself something nice. She was like this little ray of sunshine in a pretty gloomy situation. As time went on, though, things got even harder. The way my parents treated me started to feel less like favoritism toward my brother, and more like they were actually being mean to me. On purpose. It was really emotional and tough to deal with, but no matter how rough it got, I always had those moments with my grandma to remind me that someone cared. So growing up, things were pretty rough with my parents, especially when it came to how they treated me compared to my twin brother. They weren't exactly shy about letting me know they weren't impressed with my grades and my hobbies. They pretty much laughed those off too. It was like, no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't be the perfect kid they wanted. Even though I was really into sports and actually pretty good at them, my parents put a stop to me doing anything outside of schoolwork. They wanted me to be all about studying, just like my brother. It was super frustrating and made me feel totally stuck. Then, things hit a new level of crazy in my sophomore year of high school. I got grounded big time, and you want to know why? Because I had Snapchat on my phone. Yeah, that's it. I was just trying to keep up with my friends like any teenager. But to my parents, this was a massive no-no. They had this rule against me talking to my friends, which I broke by having the app. They lost it when they found out. They started throwing my stuff around my room and even took the door off its hinges, saying I wasn't allowed to have any privacy as long as I was living with them. It was super harsh and felt really unfair. And my brother, he didn't help matters at all. Instead of backing me up or even just staying out of it, he used the whole messed up situation to make things even harder for me. Our parents' over-the-top reactions and rules kind of gave him the green light to make my life miserable. It was like he was taking advantage of the whole toxic mess they were creating. So my twin brother started playing this really messed up game where he'd make up stories about me doing bad stuff that I never actually did. Like if he took something that wasn't his, he'd just say I did it. And because my parents already had this idea in their heads that I was the troublemaker, they'd just believe him without even questioning it. On top of that, he'd embarrass me in front of my friends at school, making jokes about how I looked. But here's the thing, despite all his attempts to make me look bad, I had a lot of friends. I was the kind of person who was always up for meeting new people and just generally being friendly. My brother, on the other hand, wasn't as outgoing. He was more on the shy side and didn't find it easy to talk to people. Pretty soon, he started getting really jealous of me because I could make friends so easily. While he felt left out, things really hit the fan during our 14th birthday. For some reason, none of his friends showed up to celebrate with him, which had to be tough. Meanwhile, my friends decided to take me out for ice cream, and I ended up having a great day. This just made my brother even more upset with me. So, what did he do? He ramped up his game of spreading lies about me at school. This time, he was telling people that I was this mean, spoiled kid who was always picking on him at home, which was totally untrue. He even made up stories about me being mean to him physically, just to get more attention and sympathy from our parents and our classmates. It was a really low move, especially since our parents already favored him, and now he was trying to ruin my reputation at school too. So my brother started playing this really messed up game where he'd lie about me doing things I never did. If he did something wrong, like stealing, he'd just say I did it, and because my parents already thought I was the troublemaker, they'd believe him without a second thought. He'd even make fun of me in front of my friends at school, talking about how I looked or dressed. But, weirdly enough, I was actually pretty popular at school. I was always up for making new friends, which wasn't something my brother was good at. He was more of the quiet type and didn't really know how to chat with people, which made him super jealous of me. This all blew up on our 14th birthday. For some reason, none of his friends showed up for his part of the birthday, but my friends took me out for ice cream and I had a blast. My brother got really mad about this. To get back at me, he started spreading these crazy rumors at school, telling everyone I was this horrible sister who hit him and stuff, because he said our parents liked him more. But then, he took it to a whole other level. He actually started hurting himself on purpose, like giving himself a black eye or bruises, and then telling everyone I did it to him. He'd show up at school with these injuries and tell these wild stories about how I was supposedly violent. People actually started to believe him. I started noticing that my friends were acting weird around me, not talking to me as much, and I wasn't getting invited to hang out anymore. It was like suddenly, everyone saw me as this mean person, all because of the lies my brother was telling. One day I just had to know what was going on, so I asked one of my old best friends why she was acting so strange around me, and that's when the truth came out. She told me all about the rumors my brother was spreading, saying I was abusive and all these things I'd never do. Hearing all that was like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like everything was just falling apart because of the lies my brother was telling about me. My brother, the one who shared every childhood memory with me, started spreading really nasty lies about me at school. He was saying I did terrible things, stuff I couldn't even imagine in my wildest dreams. It felt like a stab in the back, and it left me feeling really upset and alone. I couldn't believe he would do something like this to me. It was like he was a completely different person, and it scared me a lot. I tried to talk to him after school one day, hoping he'd listen and stop making up stories about me. But when I asked him to please stop lying, he just gave me this cold smirk and said something that really hurt. He told me I deserved to feel lonely. His words left me speechless. I was scared by how much his lies were affecting me, and I felt totally stuck. I thought about telling our parents what was going on, but I was really worried they wouldn't believe me over him. Feeling isolated was the worst part. I've always been the kind of person who loves making friends, but now it seemed like my brother's lies, driven by his jealousy, were ruining all the friendships I'd worked so hard to build. Even the teachers at school started hearing these rumors, which made everything feel even more unreal. It was like I was stuck in some weird alternate universe where everyone saw me as this bad person my brother was describing, not who I really am. Then, things escalated even more. The rumors didn't just stay among the students, they got all the way to the principal's office. Suddenly, I was living my absolute worst nightmare. My reputation, my relationships, everything was being turned upside down because of these false stories my twin was spreading about me. It was a really tough and scary time, trying to navigate through all this mess and figure out what to do next. So there I was, sitting in the principal's office with my heart racing like crazy. The principal had called me, my brother, and our parents in to talk about all these wild rumors going around. I was really hoping this would be the moment my brother would finally admit he made the whole thing up. But nope, he went the complete opposite way. He looked the principal straight in the eyes and doubled down on his lies, saying that yeah, the rumors about me bullying him were totally true. He even made up this whole story about how I was supposedly jealous because our parents loved him more. Total nonsense, but he told it with such conviction. As he laid out his fake story, my mom started crying, totally buying into his act and hugging him like he was some kind of victim. My dad was right there with her, patting my brother on the back and praising him for being brave enough to share his experience. It was like they were all on his side without even questioning it. I couldn't just sit there and let him spin this web of lies about me. I jumped in, trying my best to tell the principal that none of it was true, that my brother was making the whole thing up. But it felt like I was just talking to a wall. I was surrounded by these false accusations, struggling to make anyone see the truth. It was like trying to keep afloat in a stormy sea, with wave after wave of lies trying to pull me under. So there I was, in the principal's office, feeling totally cornered. My brother was on a roll, painting this picture of me as some kind of monster who was always picking on him. It was like he had rehearsed this whole story. My mom was totally buying it, crying her eyes out and giving me these looks as if I was the worst person ever. It felt like I was up against this huge wall, with everyone on my brother's side, believing every word he said. Then, the principal laid into me, saying the school had zero tolerance for bullying and what I supposedly did to my brother was serious enough to get me suspended. I couldn't believe it. I tried to convince him that it was all a big lie, that I never hurt my brother, but he wasn't having any of it. He told me I was going to be suspended for 10 whole days, hoping it would teach me and anyone else a lesson about bullying. I was desperate. Tears were pouring down my face as I begged him to change his mind, to see that I was being framed. But the principal just repeated his decision, saying it was final. The weight of it all hit me like a ton of bricks, and I broke down, crying even harder. My parents were super upset about the whole mess. Instead of listening to me, they just dragged me out of the office, wanting to get away from the embarrassing situation as fast as they could. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay and fight, to make them see I was innocent. But it was no use. They wouldn't listen. And we ended up leaving the school with me feeling totally crushed and humiliated, carrying this unfair punishment and not knowing what to do next. So, after the whole disaster at the principal's office, we headed back home. And that's when things got really crazy. Out of nowhere, my dad started packing up all my stuff. I was totally blindsided, like, what in the world is going on? My mom was just as shocked and asked him why he was doing this. But my dad was super angry and said there was no way he could let me stay in the house with my brother any longer. I lost it. I was crying so hard, begging on my knees for my brother to just tell the truth for once. But he just stood there, completely indifferent to how upset I was. Meanwhile, my dad wasn't slowing down. He packed up my things and chucked my suitcase into the foyer. I tried to stop him, clinging to his leg, pleading with him not to kick me out. But he was relentless, saying someone who bullies their sibling doesn't get to stay in his house. He mentioned he'd call my grandma to come get me. I felt like everything was falling apart. There I was, standing in the middle of chaos, my stuff all over the place, being thrown out of my own home. After a bit, my grandma arrived. She didn't waste any time gathering up my things and getting me into her car. She was super careful, making sure I was buckled in before she went to confront my parents. When she rang the doorbell and my dad answered, she let him have it. She was furious, telling him off for kicking me out and warned him sternly. She said if he dared to try anything like this again or even tried to contact me, she wouldn't think twice about getting the police or child protective services involved. She made it clear that what he did could land him in serious trouble. It was intense, and in that moment, I was just really grateful to have my grandma there for me. So, after my dad kicked me out, my mom tried to say it was all my fault. But my grandma, she wasn't buying any of that. She stood up for me big time, telling them straight up that I was just a kid and didn't deserve any of this harsh treatment. That moment was a game changer for me. I saw how strong my grandma was, not backing down or letting my parents push her around. And the best part, she believed me, even when it felt like no one else did. We left my house behind, the only place I'd ever really called home. It's hard to describe just how much it hurt, like a part of me was being torn away. I spent the next few days just lying in bed, crying and not eating, no matter how much my grandma tried to get me to. I opened up to her about everything my brother had done, and she was just as stunned as I was. But she made it clear she was on my side, which meant the world to me. Finally, I had someone in my corner. When it was time to go back to school after my suspension, I was dreading it. Walking back into school felt like I was walking into a trap. Everyone was looking at me weird, whispering and giving me those judgy looks. And my brother, he just acted like I was invisible. He had even made some new friends who were on his side, thinking he was the one who had it rough. I tried so hard to tell people the real story, to get them to see the truth, but it was like talking to a brick wall. No one wanted to hear what I had to say. So there I was, pretty much the person nobody wanted to be around at school, tagged with a label that wasn't fair or true at all. It was like this huge shadow following me everywhere I went, in class, hanging out in the cafeteria, or just walking through the halls. Everyone looked at me like they'd already decided I was bad news. It was super lonely. I'd just go through my day quietly, sit by myself for lunch, and then head straight back to my grandma's place after school. Friends, I didn't have any. It felt like the whole school had turned its back on me. During all this time, my parents didn't bother to reach out or see how I was doing, not once. But my grandma, she was always there, reminding me that none of this mess was my fault, and that things would get better eventually. I managed to finish high school with pretty good grades, all things considered, and I was really looking forward to starting college. I was hoping college would be a fresh start, a chance to turn the page. And you know what? College was like a whole new world. For the first time, I felt what it was like to be free. There was no one there to judge me, no one keeping tabs on every move I made, and no one making me feel like I was in some endless competition. I started meeting people who actually got me, who shared my interests, and before I knew it, I was making real friends. Even though I was carrying a lot of hurt and scars from everything that went down with my family and at school, I focused on leaving that behind and making the most of my time in college. It was like finally getting a breath of fresh air. So, when I got to college, I stumbled upon something pretty cool about myself. I found out I had a real talent for writing stuff. You know, like articles and content for websites. I always kind of dreamed about being a writer, but I wasn't sure if it was something I could actually make a living from. So, at first, I thought maybe I should just forget about it and find a more normal job. But then, I figured out a way to make some extra cash on the side. I started freelancing, writing stuff for different people who needed content for their websites or blogs. I signed up on a bunch of those websites where you can find freelance work, and before I knew it, I was picking up gigs from some pretty cool clients. That's how I began to put together a bunch of work that I could show off as my portfolio. I kept at this freelancing gig all through college and didn't have to ask my parents for money, not even once. When I finished college, I had this moment where I realized I didn't have to go look for a regular office job. I was already doing pretty well with my writing, and I had a bunch of clients who liked my work so much they kept asking me back for more projects. So I decided to go all in and make content writing my full-time thing. It was awesome because it meant I could make my own money, and even better, it gave me the freedom to travel. I became one of those digital nomads, working from different places all around the world. Traveling was like therapy for me, helping me heal from all the rough stuff in my past. It wasn't always easy, but I saved up as much as I could and just went for it. Over the years, I've been to so many amazing places, and even though I've seen a lot, there's still so much more out there I want to explore. It's been a wild ride, but taking that chance on myself and my writing has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. So throughout everything that's happened, the one person who's always felt like true family to me is my grandma. She's absolutely amazing, and I love her to bits. She was pretty sad when I decided it was time for me to move out and start living on my own, but she got why I had to do it. I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet, but no matter how busy I got, I always made sure to spend time with her. Every weekend I'd head over to her place. We'd either share a meal together, just the 2 of us, or we'd sit outside on the porch chatting about all sorts of things, from funny stories from when I was a kid to what was going on in our lives right now. Sometimes I'd spend the whole afternoon just helping her out around the house, or we'd go for a nice slow walk in the local park. It was our way of catching up and just enjoying each other's company. Now on to something pretty cool that happened with my work. I wrapped up this super important project recently. It was for a really big deal client, but I gotta keep it on the down low and can't spill who it was. But trust me, it was a big win for me. After finishing up, I asked the folks I worked with if they could drop some good reviews on my freelance profiles. They were super cool about it and left some awesome feedback. I decided to share some of these glowing reviews on my Instagram because working with that client was a major highlight for me. And guess what? It totally blew up. Other content writers started congratulating me, sharing my post, and pretty soon, my inbox was filling up with messages from people I didn't even know, all asking for my help with their own projects. It was like suddenly, everyone wanted to work with me. So throughout all the ups and downs, the one person who always felt like true family to me was my grandma. She was really sad when I decided to move out and start my own journey, but she got why I needed to do it. Despite being super busy with my writing and travels, I always made sure to spend time with her. Every weekend, I'd head over to her place and we'd have these awesome hangouts. Sometimes we'd share meals or just sit around talking about everything, from funny stuff that happened when I was a kid to the new things going on in my life. On those weekends, I'd help her around the house or we'd go for walks in the park just enjoying each other's company. Then something really cool happened with my work. I finished this big project for a really well-known brand. I can't spill who they are, but it was a pretty big deal for me. After wrapping up the project, I asked the team I worked with to drop some positive reviews on my freelance profiles, and they were super cool about it. I took those glowing reviews and shared them on my Instagram, knowing that having worked with such a big brand was a huge deal in the content writing world. Sure enough, other writers started congratulating me, and some even shared my posts to help spread the word. Suddenly, I was getting messages from all kinds of people who needed help with their own projects. Even some of my relatives, who hadn't really paid much attention before, started reaching out to say congrats. But here's the crazy part. My old principal from college saw how well I was doing and got in touch. He asked me to come back to college and give a talk to current students about making it as a content writer. Public speaking, not really my thing. I was super nervous, but I decided to go for it. Standing there in front of all those eager students talking about my journey, it felt like everything had come full circle. I shared the tough times, the hard work, and how I managed to keep going. It was amazing to think I might be inspiring these future writers. Some clips of my talk even got shared around on Facebook, resonating with a lot of people. And just when I thought it couldn't get any cooler, I got invited to speak on a local news show about content writing. They wanted me to share my story and insights with their viewers. I was nervous, yeah, but also really pumped about the chance to talk about what I love doing, how important it is to get and share positive feedback, and how one post can lead to so many unexpected opportunities. It's been a wild ride, but seeing my hard work get recognized like this, totally worth it. Getting to talk about what I love on a big platform was both super cool and kind of a big deal for me. After the show, I was feeling really proud, so I decided to share some clips from the TV interview on my Instagram. That's when my relatives and cousins started to realize that I was actually doing pretty well for myself in my career. You see, my parents hadn't really talked about me much to the rest of the family, so nobody knew that I was working with some big names or that I'd even been on TV. But once I posted those clips, word started to spread fast among my family members. It looks like that TV interview even got back to my parents, which was a surprise because they hadn't really been in touch with me about my work or anything else for a long time. A few days after the interview aired, I was super focused on another project and had my phone on silent. When I finally took a break and checked my phone, I was totally taken aback to see 6 missed calls from my mom. It had been ages since she last reached out to me, so seeing her name pop up on my phone was a shocker. I called her back feeling a bit unsure about what to expect. She answered right away, and the first thing she did was congratulate me on my success. Then my dad chimed in and they both started asking me all these questions about how I've been and what I've been up to. At first I just went along with it, answering their questions and catching them up on my life. But then things took a weird turn when they started asking about how much money I was making now. That moment was kind of a red flag for me. It felt strange that after all this time and silence, their interest in my life suddenly sparked up again, and especially that they were curious about my earnings. It made me pause and wonder what was really going on with this sudden call. So when my parents called me out of the blue and started asking about how much money I was making, I was pretty taken aback. I told them straight up that it wasn't any of their business. But then my dad tried to play the we're family card, saying I shouldn't be shy about sharing my income with them. I kept it vague, just mentioned I was doing okay for myself, but that opened a whole new can of worms. My mom jumped in with this story about how tough things were for them now that they're retired. She started talking about how they wanted to fix up the house, which apparently wasn't in great shape, but they didn't have any savings left to do it. Then she laid it on me. They saw my TV interview, realized I was doing well, and figured I could cough up the cash for their home renovations. You know, because we're family and I shouldn't just help out. That's when I really started to question what was going on. I mean, they hadn't bothered to talk to me for years, and now suddenly they're hitting me up for money. I asked them straight out why they thought it was okay to ask me for money after all this time of silence. And when I said I wasn't going to help, my mom got really harsh, calling me names and saying I was obligated to support them because we're family. My dad chimed in too, saying that as my parents they deserve to be taken care of and helping them with money was the least I could do. That really got me fired up. I was so ready to let them have it, but then I had this idea. Instead of just getting into a big argument, I figured maybe there was a way I could teach them a lesson, to make them think twice before thinking they could just use me like an ATM. So, after years of not so great treatment from my parents, I came up with a plan when they suddenly decided to reach out, asking for my help with money. I saw an opportunity to maybe set some things right. I told them I'd consider helping them out, but I had a big condition they needed to meet first. Probably thinking it was going to be something simple, asked what it was. I didn't beat around the bush, I told them straight up. I said, if you want my help, you guys need to admit to everyone, our family, our friends, that it was my brother who started all those nasty rumors about me. I wanted them to call him out, just like they let me get called out, based on his lies. Basically, I was asking them to own up to the fact that they messed up by always taking his side without questioning it. When I dropped this condition on them, my dad was taken aback. He couldn't see why we needed to drag this into the open, questioning why such a public admission was necessary. My mom jumped in, suggesting that we could just talk this over privately, without making a big scene in front of others. They were trying to dodge having to really face up to what they and my brother did, preferring to keep everything hush-hush like it hadn't affected my whole life. But I was standing my ground, looking for some real acknowledgement of the pain they caused by always siding with my brother and never questioning his side of the story. So, when my parents hit me up asking for money to fix up their house, I saw a chance to maybe get some long overdue justice. I told them I'd only think about helping them if they did one thing for me. Go public about how my brother was the one spreading all those nasty rumors that messed up my reputation. I was totally serious about it. This wasn't just some random request. It was the deal breaker for me. But man, did things get heated. My dad, trying to pull the "I'm your father" card, basically shouted at me that I should be helping them out because, well, they're family. Then my mom tried to guilt trip me, talking about how they raised me and all that. The thing is, they kind of forgot the part where they kicked me out, and it was actually my grandma who took care of me after that. They didn't take my condition well at all. They got super mad, but I stood my ground. I told them straight up, if they wanted my help, or even just to talk to me moving forward, they needed to come clean about everything and make sure my brother got called out for what he did. Ever since that call, they've been trying to reach me nonstop, but I'm just not picking up. I'm honestly starting to wonder if I should have even bothered calling them back in the first place. Now I'm kind of stuck wondering if I'm being too harsh by not helping them out at all, considering everything that's happened. Update 1. So, a lot has happened since I last told you guys about what's been going on with my parents. And while I've got to say the support from everyone has just blown me away, it feels amazing to know I'm not going through this mess alone. Everyone's been telling me I'm doing the right thing by not talking to my parents or thinking about helping them, especially after everything they've done. I kind of set that condition for them, knowing full well they'd never go through with it. I mean, they're super attached to my brother, and even if they've started to see he's been lying this whole time, there's no way they'd make him face the music like they made me. They just wouldn't put him through the kind of stuff they put me through. And then, out of the blue, my brother decides to text me this super mean message. After all this time, he hits me up to say that life's been awesome without me and that he heard our folks tried to reach out. He seemed pretty amused that I gave them some kind of wild condition to meet. So after all the drama with my parents trying to get in touch and me setting the condition, my brother sends me this completely out of line text. He basically laughs off the idea that our parents would ever admit he was lying about me. He goes on to say that they've always been on his side because according to him they never really loved me. Then he drops this bombshell. He admits he lied about me all those years ago but acts like it's no big deal since it's been so long. But here's the kicker. He tries to make me feel guilty for not helping our parents with their house stuff. He calls me selfish for holding on to the past and then tries to hit me where it hurts by bringing up that I'm unmarried and don't have kids, like somehow that's supposed to make me want to jump in and fix their problems. His message was pretty much a low blow, trying to guilt trip me into doing what he wants by pointing out my personal life choices. Feeling that stab of pain from his words and fed up with his lack of understanding, I knew I couldn't let this go. It was clear he didn't get how much his lies had messed up my life. So, driven by a mix of anger and a need to set the record straight, I decided to lay everything out in the open. I sat down and wrote this long email to my parents and all our close relatives. I poured out all the painful memories from when I was a kid, all the times I was treated unfairly, and how it felt growing up in our house. I wanted them to know the real story, the truth about what went down and how it wasn't just some petty sibling rivalry. It was serious and it hurt me deeply. It was time for everyone to know what really happened and to understand why I couldn't just move on and help out like nothing was wrong. So, I decided to write this super detailed email to my entire family explaining everything that's been going down. In it, I talked about how tough it was living at home with my parents. They were really strict with me, way more than they ever were with my twin brother. It was like we were living in two different worlds under the same roof. Then, I got into the whole deal with the nasty rumor my brother spread about me back in school. That rumor wasn't just a small thing. It seriously messed up my reputation and made my life super hard. I also mentioned in the email how my parents basically threw me out, and if it weren't for my awesome grandma, I don't even want to think about where I'd be right now. But here's the real kicker. At the end of the email, I put in a screenshot of the message my brother sent me where he straight up admits he lied about me. It was like finally having proof of his lies that I could show everyone. I hit send on that email just an hour ago, and I'm pretty sure it's going to cause a major storm when my parents and brother see it. I'll let you know what happens next with my family after they read my email. Update 2. So, it's been a whole month since I last filled you in, and wow, a ton of stuff has gone down. After I hit send on that email, things pretty much exploded like I thought they would. My parents got a lot of heat from our relatives, who were totally in the dark about how unfairly I was treated and how much favoritism was going on. A bunch of our family members actually reached out to me to say they were sorry. They told me they had no clue things were that bad and felt bad for not being there for me when I needed someone. That felt pretty good, not gonna lie. But then, there was my brother and my parents. They started flooding my phone with all these super mean and nasty messages. Things were getting really out of hand and their texts were starting to get scary. That's when I decided enough was enough. I got in touch with a lawyer and we sent my family a cease and desist notice. It's basically a legal way of saying, back off or else. And guess what? It actually worked. They stopped messaging me completely. I think the possibility of getting into real legal trouble freaked them out. My grandma, who's been my rock through all of this, totally thinks I did the right thing by spilling the beans and standing up for myself. She's been supporting me all the way, and honestly her opinion is the only one I really care about. Knowing she's got my back makes all the difference. Update 3. So, it's been a couple of months since I last gave you all an update. And guess what? Things are actually looking pretty good for me these days. On the work front, my content writing business is doing better than ever. I keep getting invited to talk at different seminars and podcasts, which is pretty awesome. It's like I'm becoming this well-known person in the content writing world, and I'm super proud of it. And my grandma, we're as close as two peas in a pod. I recently decided to take a little break from all the work stuff just so I could hang out with her. She's gotten really into gardening lately, and she's been teaching me all about the different flowers and herbs she's growing. It's been a lot of fun, and honestly just spending time with her, whether we're eating together, having deep talks, or just chilling, makes for some of the best moments ever. After that whole drama with my family and sending them the lawyer's letter, they've completely backed off. I haven't heard a peep from them, which is exactly how I want it. On a personal note, I've started seeing a therapist. I'm really hoping that with some professional help, I can start to heal from all the stuff that's happened. I'm feeling pretty hopeful about it. I think this is going to be my last update for a while. Things are going well, and I'm just focusing on enjoying my work, spending time with my grandma, and working on getting better with the help of therapy.